Depending on who you ask, some players will say that Overwatch tanks are completely busted and deserve hard nerfs, and others will say that the role is the most frustrating role to play and it's actually near or borderline unplayable. But what is the truth here? Is there a tanking problem in Overwatch? And if there is, how does Blizzard fix it? There's a lot we got to break down and talk about, but my question of the day is, what do you think is the biggest problem plaguing Overwatch today? Why? Let me know down below. Now, the thing about tanking is it's very important. We all know how important a tank is in Overwatch because we have lost games to our tanks just throwing over and over again, and we have, in some games, been dominated by a huge tank difference. But the thing about tanks is even though at times they can feel powerful, they can feel strong, and it's definitely important to have one, like if you have one AFK, you're never winning a game, the tanking experience as a whole has been just going down the drain. And a lot of people ask why. Tanks are super strong, they have all these extra abilities compared to Overwatch 1. What are the things that cause tanking to feel so terrible? And why does a role that is so vital feel so lacking and really just not fun to play? Well, a lot of these dominant situations where a tank just takes over a lobby, that only really happens when the enemy tank is like actually not playing the game. But when both tanks are playing, most games will feel more or less at parity. Now, yes, there are ways in which for you to have higher impact and to make plays and things like that, but a lot of what you do in a game can feel super sub-impactful because there's a lot of other factors that are out of your control and you just can't do anything about. And especially because you are a solo tank, you feel like the target of a number of different abilities that are just being spammed your way. Well, yes, a tank's job is to eat a lot of these cooldowns and create space for your team. It doesn't feel fun to constantly be hit by cooldowns that CC you, hit by nades, non-stop get targeted by every ability under the sun, and you just feel like you have no agency. Like, whether or not you can accomplish anything at all often feels like it comes down to what your teammates are doing and what they're doing to help you and what they're doing to deny the enemy team, and you just feel kind of like just a freaking dog on a leash where you don't get to go where you want to go, you don't get to do what you want to do, you are just guided around and you're expected to do your job. And I'm 100% not saying that there aren't ways to carry on the tank role. And I'm not saying that you're not impactful, because you are both impactful and you can carry from the tank role. But I am arguing that doing these things is not fun at all. In fact, depending on the meta you're in, and oftentimes it feels like when you're playing tank, you are sacrificing your fun for the win. Like you are actively enduring a punishing experience just for the betterment of your team's victory, right? You're doing things that you don't want to do just so that you can reach that dub because you're not having fun. You're having a very linear experience. And regardless of your impact, regardless of what you can do to actually win that game, it doesn't matter because you're just not having any fun. And this is why people have been playing tanks less. This is why the role has been getting worse and worse. And there are other factors that also create this problem, like counter-picking tanks is something that can happen really easily. There's a lot of tanks, and with there only being one, being very easy to counter, and there's a lot of characters that can really make your life miserable. Like your queen, and every time you walk forward, you get naded. If you're Doomfist and someone keeps swapping to Sombra, if you're playing any character but Diva and people want to go for Mercy, there's all these combos and counters that people can just swap to. And unlike other people, other roles especially, tanks are expected to be more flexible than the other roles. While you're not necessarily going to just straight up throw a game if you're playing something untraditional or doesn't counter or directly deal with an enemy problem because there's someone else that is playing your role that can help out, tanks can't do that, right? You are the end-all be-all. So if you're not being effective, then you're expected to swap to actually figure out how to find value. Otherwise, you're just going to lose the game. So not only are you not going to have a fun experience, but you're also going to lose the game, just straight up. So tanks are expected to be super flexible, always finding ways to find value, but even in the games that they do find value, those games are rarely fun, and that just creates like the worst possible time for tanks. But how does Blizzard fix this problem? How does Blizzard make tanking more fun, more competitive, a funner role to play while not making them like giga overpowered? Well, the first thing they could do is bring back another tank, but they're not going to do that, at least not anytime soon. Maybe in Overwatch 3, but not for now. So if they're not bringing back another tank, how else do they fix this problem? Well, the first thing they could do is make sure that we are out of metas that are miserable to play in from a tank's perspective. So one of the big problems with crowd control, especially in Overwatch 1, is that there was too much of it, right? A tank could just get CC'd over and over and over again, moved around. I mean, there's like a whole bunch of clips of like Reinhardt getting punched around a map by a goddamn Doomfist and just getting stunned by Cass and all this stuff. And while it's good that there's less CC in the game overall, there's still CC in the tank role. And one of the biggest ones right now is Orisa, who has a crazy amount of crowd control that she gets to do over and over and over again. And yes, I understand that it's limited to the tank role, but that doesn't make it less fun to play against. And oftentimes tanks are making other tanks not fun to play. So you can approach this in a couple of ways. You could say, okay, I don't even care where the CC is coming from. We're just going to minimize CC across the board. We're going to reduce the crowd control of slows and rocks and things regardless of the role you're in. That means getting rid of these or nerfing these things across the board for even tanks and getting rid of a lot of them. That would actually make the tanking experience better, just straight up. The other thing that you could do is make it so CC actually hurts tanks less. And the way that you would do this is a couple of ways. You could do something like on a sleep dart where you're sleeping a target and it only sleeps it for a lesser rate. That's one way you could do it. You could up the CC resistance, but at the same time, you got to make sure that you don't do that too much to make the role overpowered. Or you could just minimize the metas in which there are high amounts of CC. I think metas that have Orisas in them in general should be actively avoided. I've said this before, Orisa should never freaking be meta. And also metas that are heavy on spam should be actively avoided. Like damage needs to do a couple things. It needs to matter. That's a really important thing. I know that that seems like a really weird concept, but we should not be spamming it to avoid. This is like not double shield. We're not just spamming damage. Damage should actively matter. Play should actively matter. And people should be CC'd less. I think these are things that most people can like actually agree on. So less emphasis on spam, less emphasis on characters that do spam, less emphasis on CC. But then even to the next level of that, and I've argued this in a previous video and I'll continue to argue it here, it is really important about the fun factor in Overwatch. Like, Blizzard needs to make it so that people are actively having fun and that things that create unfun situations, even if they're not overpowered, should be nerfed and getting rid of. The playback loop, the play loop of the game of Overwatch, whether it's support, DPS, or tank, should be fun for everyone involved. I don't mean it needs to be super fun all the time, but no one should be having a miserable time to the point where they don't want to play the role anymore. And we're seeing that in the tanking role. And it's something that just can't happen. It doesn't matter whether or not something's balanced. It doesn't matter about win rate and pick rate or any of that crap that Blizzard always likes to cite for their reason for changing things. Completely arbitrary, by the way, and they don't give us any transparency behind these metrics. But even outside of that, outside of competitive integrity, outside of anything else, it's important that people are having fun and they feel like they have an impact over the games they play. Now, I think we will continue to run into these problems where Blizzard wants to always shake up the meta and make certain characters that don't see a lot of play see meta, but not every character is just fun to be meta and fun to play against all the freaking time. Bastion, cool character, fun to play for a while, not a fun for a persistent meta. Torb, same thing. Far Mercy, same thing. Sombra meta, same thing. Like, a lot of these characters are characters that are cool to see, and we would love to see them represented in the pick rate of certain games, but you do not want to see them in every game you play, right? You just don't want to see them as the staple meta for the game, and it's super important that you think about the metas not only based on how diverse they are, but how fun they are. And you can also do tweaks to certain characters to make it so they still see play, while at the same time making it so certain frustrating aspects of them are minimized or weakened, while maybe other less frustrating aspects of them are strengthened and stronger. So you can make characters stronger while making them less frustrating to play against. Anyways, this is my take. I really want to pass the question off to you. Do you agree or disagree that there is a tanking problem, and do you agree with my solution, or do you have another solution in mind? Let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.